All right, next up, we have Anna Rose.
Hi, let me just pull this up. Right. So I'm Anna Rose, and while I am very, very sad not to be in Brooklyn for this incredible and historic event that Ruby has dreamed up for us, I'm in Drake's second favorite city, I would suppose. It's 8 p.m. in London. I'm actually not sure he fucks with London anymore now that Rihanna's moved on, but I loved your disclaimer side, Nicole. Justice for Rihanna. We digress. Is it all? Can you hear me and stuff? I can see you moving around. Oh, you can see all my
Yeah,
slides
yeah,
as well.
yeah, we can hear you perfectly.
Do you mind like pulling up the like this? Because I can see that you can see my like whole screen, which is not ideal. If I share this in the chat. Oh, hold on. Let me try this. Is that more like centered? Slightly more centered. Cool. Anyway.
I think this is
So
good.
great, thank you. So I'm excited to share this browser-based collage that I made in 2015 when the video for Hotline Bling came out. And Director X, who directed the video for Hotline Bling, has said that it was inspired by what he's always done, citing his work for Sean Paul's Give Me the Light as the key influence. But like pretty much everyone else on the internet, I instantly noticed the similarities between the video set design and the work of James Turrell, which is what inspired this site at the time. So we'll just keep it looping up, which is why I wanted to make sure it was kind of centered on your screen. And I'm going to chat about how influential this video was for a minute, and then we'll come back to it. So I first encountered James Turrell's work in Italy in this beautiful place called Villa Panza, which is a villa full of works by Dan Flavin, James Turrell, and other artists that work with light and space. And I really do think, unlike some of the other artists that work with light and space, Turrell's work is best experienced in person, because it's kind of like this ethereal quality when you walk into a room and you can't see where the edges of it are. And it doesn't show up in photos quite like it feels in person. And around the same time that I was discovering Turrell in Italy, Drake was doing the same in Los Angeles. In a now infamous 2013 interview for Rolling Stone magazine, he kicks off his Timberlands and enters a work by Turrell called Perceptual Cell, which is kind of like an MRI machine, and it plays light and sound, and it's meant to stimulate your brain to shift your perception. And art historian Ala Gaddis has theorized that the main reason these works have received so little attention in comparison to the rest of Turrell's canon is because they are so difficult to describe and by their nature impossible to document. Like you just can't take a art selfie during your experience of Perceptual Cell. So what is the work like? Drake said coming out of it that all his questions about life were answered by the work. And then he asked the guide that was showing him around how much it would cost to get one of these for his house, 20 million. And Jason, the guide, replied, wow, I don't know. Turrell does do residential commissions though. So this interview took place in the year that Jay-Z dropped basically an entire album about how many Picassos and Basquiats that him and Beyonce own. And in response, in the same interview, Drake says that he would love to collect art, he means at some point, but the whole rap/art world thing is getting kind of corny, which, as we know from Nicole's presentation just now, like corniness is kind of Drake's whole thing. So an interesting quote. And having trawled the internet and watching Champagne Pappy's Instagram stories for new art acquisitions, I actually don't think that he does own a Turrell work. And I did DM him to ask, but he did not reply. His art collection instead is like a bunch of Warhols and Kaws dolls, and in my humble opinion, it's like as corny as it gets, which I think is nice because it kind of reflects his personality in a quite sweet way, I think. But whether Drake owns one or not, there's no denying that Hotline Bling has propelled Turrell's work into the forefront of the contemporary art scene. And Turrell himself has said of the video, it's humbling that most people have probably heard about me through this than anything else. And I think one particularly famous family may have also discovered Turrell through Drake. In an Architectural Digest video tour of Kendall Jenner's home in 2020, she begins it by standing in front of this work just here. This is the image. Beautiful pink sculpture, and she explains the historic significance of the work by saying, it's actually called Scorpius, and I'm a Scorpio, so, which is just like absolutely perfect in how everyone should collect art, in my opinion. And in her bedroom, she also has a Tracy Emin neon sculpture, which has the dimensions of one of Emin's ex-boyfriends' dick size. So I kind of love that too. I also have a prized Emin work in my bedroom. It's a very small print of a humble drawing, but the subject matter is also an ex-boyfriend's dick. So I guess my taste in art is more like Kendall's than it is Drake's. Her mother, Kris Jenner, her sister, Kylie Jenner, obviously Kendall, all have these neon Emins in their home. And these sculptures have been described by critics as crass and corny. There's that word again. In response to the criticism, Emin has said most people don't have profound philosophical thoughts all the time. They think like pop songs, kind of suggesting that her work is made for this kind of thinking. And it definitely makes me think of a pop song, which you all know what that pop song is. I know in that Hot Pink Bling, it means one thing, that the aesthetic taste of these celebrities, my opinion, has been influenced by none other than Aubrey Graham himself. So for anyone unfamiliar with the Kylie Jenners, which I know there's some academics in the room, so maybe you've escaped it, I'm going to briefly make the link from Drake, a Scorpio no less, to Kendall Jenner's Scorpius, which won't be hard. So 2013, this interview comes out that I've just mentioned, where Drake goes to see the Turrell retrospective at LACMA. The year after that, Kanye West, who is a longtime collaborator of Drake's and definitely more recently one of the dragons in Drake's hero's journey, marries reality TV star Kim Kardashian. The year after that, 2015, Hotline Bling comes out and Turrell says, well, I'm truly flattered to learn that Drake fucks with me. I nevertheless wish to make it clear that neither I nor any of my woes were involved in any way in making the Hotline Bling video, but he decides not to pursue a lawsuit. And then a couple of years later, in 2018, Drake alludes to having an affair with Ye's then wife Kim in 2 songs in that year. In My Feelings, he sings Kiki Do You Love Me, and in his verse for Travis Scott's Sicko Mode, he references creeping down the block, and they lived on the same street at the time. And least we forget that Travis Scott has 2 children with Kimmy K's younger sister, Kylie Jenner. So this is all very connected. And Drake's lyrics add fuel to the long feud between Ye and Drake. And my theory is that Ye gets back at him by literally buying out the aesthetic of Drake's most viral hit. A couple of months after this big public feud where Drake won't deny that he slept with Kim, Ye donates $10 million to help fund James Turrell's Road and Crater, which is this ambitious project to basically create a gallery out of a volcano crater in Arizona. And then Ye goes on to release his film Jesus is King, which is shot there. We know from interviews that a lot of the Kylie Jenner clan have visited the unopened site on exclusive tours, including Devin Booker, who was dating Kendall Jenner at the time that he went, and bought James Turrell for his own home. So then we look back to the beginning of the story in 2020. Kendall Jenner opens her Architectural Digest tour with a Turrell in her hallway, and she says, I've always been a huge fan of Turrell. I was introduced to his work by Kanye, who collaborates with him. And at this point, they've been collaborating for a year, so I'm not sure how long always means, but this is the official point where it's Ye and not Drake, who is kind of established in pop culture as the rapper that Turrell fucks with, which is kind of interesting given the Hotline Bling aesthetics. Since then, it feels like every museum is doing light-based art, which is nice. My Instagram was full up with art selfies in front of the exact same Kusama works all around the world, and TBH, it's nice that people are appreciating contemporary art, so no hate there. But why is this medium so attractive to both celebrities and Instagrammers? Neon was discovered in 1910 and soon after adopted by brands who wanted to stand out, in a storefront. It's by nature very garish and attention-getting, which makes it perfect for advertising. And then pop artists, borrowing from the world of mass media, established neon as a valid artistic medium in the 1950s and 60s. So it kind of makes sense that this gaudy medium, chosen by advertisers to attract attention, has become a backdrop for those whose careers rely entirely on attention. Much like we've just heard, Drake's whole career relies on the memeability rather than the album sales. But I think the attraction to neon, and particularly to Charles' work, is maybe less about branding and more about meditation. And I think possibly for people whose entire existences are documented and are about documenting everything they do, it must be really reflective to live with an artwork which, by its design, is impossible to accurately document through the medium of photography or video. So it's kind of like the internal soul of these people who externally continually photographed. And I think this is what hit Drake so hard at the LACMA retrospective in 2013. And he said at the time that he really wanted to take a picture in it, and that a selfie inside perpetual cell would have been the ultimate stunt. But of course, the desirability of this potential photo comes from its material impossibility. So coming back to my own work, this thing on the screen, just briefly, and then we can open up if there's any questions. So in 2015, I've been making these kind of minimalist hand-coded collages for a few years. And the idea is that they bring content from all around the internet into conversation through iframes or just simple JavaScript. I'm a huge fan of pop art collages, and the aim is kind of to do the same thing, but with internet as my source material. You might have come across a website called Please Help Me Beyonce, which solved boy problems with bass songs, which I made around the same time as this, and it got a fair bit of press because, as we know, girls love Beyonce. So my goal with these collages is that the entire thing is like under 100 kilobytes and under 100 lines of code, although this one is slightly over that. And the way that they are so small is because rather than hosting all these images, it literally just pulls Terrell's work as it's hosted elsewhere on the internet. So if I'm going to be pretentious, it's a bit like how his work pulls in the light, like in this work, from the sky, and really just acts as a frame through which you are asked to perceive it. And I have updated it this week, so there are a bunch of works in here that are post 2015 as well. And there it is. It's in front of this window into Terrell's canon that Drake just dances endlessly. I find it quite meditative. I kind of made it actually for a girl I was seeing at the time, but like for her and me, and like I think you can just pull it up and zone out and imagine what corny art you would buy if you had Drake's budget for your own home. Questions?
Thank you so much. This was a wonderful presentation. I'm very curious about how impactful the appreciation of art from these figures is downstream, and whether or not we do see, Terrell becoming more popular with the public, especially when the works themselves are site specific. So do they become prized, or their attendance increases specifically when you need to go to, here I think the closest maybe Mass Mocha, and you need to drive to go there. So what is the impact of these celebrities on the works and their sort of overall popularity from your perspective?
Yeah, I think it's been quite massive. I mean, the closest one to me is in the Row clothing store in Mayfair. There's one like in the entranceway, which obviously has a very direct link to celebrity. So I think, he's been making these light sculptures for decades and decades and decades. Like the Villa Panzer stuff was all bought in the 70s, I believe. But he's been much, much more prolific since the Hotline Bling video came out, and even you know, to think of Kusama, whose work is also using light, some of it, and her recent collaborations with the likes of Louis Vuitton, where you can go into, again, sorry, this is a London clothing store example, but there was like a big Harrods exhibition of her work where you could kind of experience the infinity room inside a clothing store. Like, I think that is totally celebrity, and it is like this kind of wrap up of celebrity and brands kind of wanting to pull on what celebrities are promoting and therefore making this art slightly more accessible to the public. So yeah, I reckon super linked. And obviously, like Road and Crater, that's only going to happen because of Kanye's backing, if it does ever happen. And then we'll all have to make a decision about whether we're going to drive out to the desert to see it.
Any questions from the crowd? Yeah. So I'm not sure if you heard this, but the question is, are there other provenance stories of who put who on that you're aware of in, like, you know, hip hop or rap or just general pop culture?
Sorry, could you elaborate? I didn't hear that question.
Oh, other provenance stories, meaning other people, like specifically artists, musicians influencing other musicians to get on a specific wave of someone like Terrell or any other visual artist.
Yeah, I mean, Beyonce, who, you know, I love, uses artists all the time. And my theory on that is Solange is the one that's finding these artists and knows about contemporary art. And her sister's kind of just like stealing stuff for her music videos. Like Beyonce famously never credits the artists that she quite clearly rips off in her music videos. But in Solange's own work, it's less about kind of ripping it off, and it's more about like paying homage to different movements and like where her music or her art or her videos kind of fit in this like canon of work. So I think that's probably like the most obvious reference, which we can't prove. Neither of them have said that this is the case. Obviously, Beyonce's never going to say it's the case, but you can tell that Solange is very into contemporary art, and Beyonce has obviously got some decent references in her videos that have come from somewhere, right? Hopefully that answers the question.
What do you think is the signal or the significance of having such works in one's home? I think, you know, AD is quite popular. We see a lot of people giving tours, and sometimes the works are blurred, actually. So what do you think a person like Kardashian is trying to signal with the presence of a Terrell?
Yeah, I mean, that particular Terrell has come up so much. Like, I feel like she gets photographed in front of it all the time. And the price of it is like really public as well. It was like 750,000. We know that she bought it at Frieze Los Angeles, and like I think she uses it as a way of signaling that she's into contemporary art, which is kind of interesting. Like, it's been a minute since celebrities have used contemporary art as like a thing to get like credit from. So I think in the case of the Turrells, like there must be some sort of, again, complete speculation. There must be some sort of like press thing going on where, you know, they're using this work as like a link into the coolness of contemporary art, and James Turrell is giving permission for AD to like publish this work everywhere, because the family is obviously, or was before the divorce when Ye was still part of the family, funding his art practice. So they are really quite literally patrons. But yeah, I do think having something like that in your home must be quite meditative. And like even when Devin Booker is taking AD around his home, he talks about like if you stare at it for long enough, starts to look like a rectangle coming out of the wall, and it just does show that they are looking at these things and spending time with them, which a print that, you know, Drake has some like prints that we could all just print out and like have a version of in our homes. Like they don't hold as much significance if everyone can have it and everyone can experience it, right?
Yeah. Thank you so much for the wonderful presentation.
Thank you.